With all of this turmoil, what is the feeling like in Beijing?
What President Trump and his administration are doing is a global trade war. It is a global tariff war against mankind, against the world, in particular against China. China does not want to see free trade being damaged and destroyed in front of our eyes. China wants to see that it will be a major force to prevent such ravaging of free trade. And China wants to be the standard bearer of free trade. This is not just for China's purpose. This is for all the free-loving trading nations in the world.
Where is this trade war heading? How bad is this going to get?
It is very bad. It's an unprecedented trade war on such a large global scale, possibly not for almost 100 years. But we need to look back into history. In 1920s and 30s, when the trade war, the protectionists of all kinds raised their dangerous head, eventually it led to the global war. It led to destruction of all kinds, massacres, atrocities against humanities, etc. Now, when we look at this round of the global trade war, we see dangerous signs in this trade war because this will destroy the foundation upon which the international order is based upon. We see the international order being collapsed, not by other forces, but by the United States under Trump. So this is very, very dangerous. I think we need to protect our own individual countries' economic interests, that's for sure. But we also need to know where this whole thing is going. Whether rule of law will need to yield to rule of the jungle, whether the collective decision of mankind should be undermined in favor of domination by one country and one country alone, whether we should really rally around the United Nations, the WTO, and all the other international organizations to strive for consensus-based decision-making, or allow any country in the world to dominate and to intimidate and, in my best phrase I can think of, hold a gun at your head to demand your surrender. This is one of the moments of truth for mankind. And every country, every company, every society need to make its own decision. But I hope defending free trade is the right thing. It is the consensus building, especially for countries like Australia. You have more cattle than human beings. You probably have more sheep than cattle. And if you cannot engage in free trade with the rest of the world, your wealth will be diminished, living standards will plunder, etc. So in this sense, I think China and Australia, and China and many other countries in the global south or in the developed world, etc., we have a vested interest in free trade. And China is patient. China can wait until the dust settles. If it takes months, or if it takes years, if it takes all the way up to 2029 when the next president should move into the Oval Office in the White House, we can wait. But we can never sacrifice the fundamental principles of free trade.
Do you see this as a hostile act by the United States?
Well, there is a distinguished American who said such a global tariff war is an economic nuclear war. So we should not really underestimate the magnitude and the historical significance of this global trade war or the tariff war. Whether it will eventually evolve into Cold War or hot war, no one knows. I hope it will not. I hope some sound mind will eventually emerge in Washington. I hope eventually the American people will make their voices known and we will avert the further deterioration of this global trade war or the tariff war and never evolve in that direction of a real war, especially a hot war. Now, in the world of today, if a hot war breaks out between China and the United States, both these countries have tremendous amount of power to destroy each other multiple times and cause Armageddon. So, China is a force for peace. I hope the United States will never think about a war against China. But if they really want to instigate a war, then China is fully prepared.
What about all of the damage that's done in the meantime? I mean, you stand to lose 15% of your export market overnight. I mean, surely that's going to have a significant impact on your people, on the Chinese people.
My only answer is that we don't care. China's logic is very simple, tit for tat. If you slap me in the face, I slap you in the face. If you hold a gun at my head, I hold a gun at your head. If you threaten war, I threaten war back at you. If you want to destroy China, China will destroy you. China will never fire the first shot, but China will not allow you to fire the second shot. That's the way of life for China. Free trade is something that China wants to defend at any cost. And if Washington keeps bluffing, keeps intimidating, keeps holding a gun at China's head, China will have no other choice but to rise up. President Trump should tell the world that he does not mean evil towards the Chinese people, and he respects the Chinese people. He needs to give a lecture to Vice President J.D. Vance. Don't call Chinese nation peasants. Deal with China as it is. Show respect to the Chinese people. That will be a better starting point for China-U.S. real negotiations. Try to bring this mess to an end and try to restore peace, try to restore free trade for the benefit of mankind.
Do you accept that Mr. Trump is trying to protect his businesses and jobs?
No. First of all, the maximum tariff against the rest of the world, including against China, will not move manufacturing jobs back to the United States. If President Trump is serious, President Trump needs to talk with China, because China has been the most successful manufacturing country in the world today. China's manufacturing output is larger than EU, US, Japan combined together. And China produces about 6 times more power for industrial use than the United States does. So if President Trump is serious about recreating manufacturing jobs in the United States, he needs to do several things. And I offer this advice without charging him a penny. He needs to build up connectivity, build up container ports, build up high-speed railway, build up high-quality highway system, for example, build up inner river transportation. And he needs to increase power generation like crazy. He needs to at least double the power capacity in the United States to really achieve meaningful amount of manufacturing jobs back to the United States. He needs to train the American people. He needs to instill this discipline and work ethics which will enable the great people in the United States to work in factories which need to be competitive, which need to have the marketability not only in the US market, but in the global market. On top of that, you need to create an environment, pro-business environment. Now, I'm afraid in the United States today, they lack almost all of this. And you think tariff will really force manufacturing jobs back to the United States?
China is giving as good as it gets, right?
Well, I think of the greater importance is the Chinese restrictions on the export of rare earth products. This rare earth material is widely used in the national defense, especially you're talking about missiles of all kinds, phantom planes, etc. So if China really plays its cards, it will be on the rare earth export. And I don't think anytime soon, in the immediate future or a couple of decades, the United States can find any meaningful replacement. So when Trump says you have no cards, he should realize China has a lot of cards. You want to treat China as an enemy, then you will get an enemy in China. We will cut off all these supplies to you, and we will never trade in any meaningful way rare earth with the Americans. And we want to see whatever progress you can make in your national defense.
What did you think when you heard Mr. Trump was slapping these tariffs on China? What was your personal reaction?
I feel very sorry for the Americans. They do not need to see their living standards being ripped off, being eroded by all these tariffs, declared by Trump being paid by foreign countries, but actually paid by the good-natured, kind-hearted American people.
It is extraordinary, his behaviour. He's being described as, a one-man wrecking ball and things like that. How would you describe him?
Mr. Donald Trump is the President of the United States of America. In that capacity, I think I will give him all the respect he deserves. On the other hand, the way he is dealing with global trade, the way he is slapping such exorbitant global tariff against so many countries, foes and non-foes, friends and non-friends alike, is terrible. He doesn't know what he's really doing. He probably never went to a grocery store. He never really understands the plight and the fact that most of the Americans don't have cash reserves, for example. They don't have savings. They live from paycheck to paycheck. He doesn't care for all the economic losses he is causing. He doesn't care if many companies, many factories throughout the world will be closed because of this global tariff war.
What do you think the impact will be to Australia?
Well, Australia needs to make up its own mind. I think Australia is a proud, export-oriented country. You produce lots of things that cannot be completely consumed back at home because of the, relatively speaking, smaller size of your population. Trade, especially open trade and free trade, is a source of wealth for the Australian people. So I will be surprised if the Australian government will ever sacrifice the principle of free trade. And between China and Australia, we do trade on large scale, and Australia consistently has run a trade surplus. But China is happy with that because the goods we buy from Australia are highly needed in China, and we admire the quality of all these products from Australia. Now, Australia need to make up its mind whether they want to become subordinate of the United States, calling the United States uncle by sacrificing its own fundamental interest. After all, China is the largest trading nation with Australia. So you need to balance off several conflicting interests. You are a strong ally of the United States. Everyone knows about that. But trading-wise, you have very good trading relations with China. And between Australia and the United States, you also need to stick to the principle of free trade. So I hope by the end of the day, Australia will remain a staunch champion of free trade, actively engage in free trade with the rest of the world. You will remain a strong ally of the United States, but you do not want to really sacrifice your own independence of mind under maximum bullying or intimidation by Washington. Australia need to keep its own sanity.
When you look at the history and you look at the tariffs that China has imposed on Australia, I mean, China can't really complain. It's slapped a number of tariffs on Australia.
China slapped tariffs on Australian goods when China-Australian relations were very strained because of what China believed. The Australian government at that time blindly followed the dictates from Washington. China is not an enemy of Australia. We suffer a trade deficit, but we don't care because we really love the made in Australia products. And I would say the market demand in China for many things made in Australia will be huge. But if Australia does the wrong thing, for example, challenge China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, blindly follow the American leadership, and try to pick a fight with China at no provocation at all, then China need to retaliate. China need to slap tariffs on Australian-made goods.
What are the chances this tariff war will cause a global recession?
Very likely. I think the United States most likely will be hit with a recession first because of the problems in the equity market, in the bond market, in the exchange market, the rivalry between Trump and the Fed chairman, etc. And then inflation will really run out of control. Sooner or later, the American will find itself either on the verge of recession or really plunge into a recession. This is a high probability event. Now, for the rest of the world, I think if all these global tariff remains in effect and being implemented, the global economic growth probably will be slowed down by minimum 1% this year. So that will make lots of countries either plunging in recession or on the verge of recession. You look at countries like Germany or Britain, and if you look at Japan, for example, they are already kind of wobbling. They are not standing very firm on their feet as far as economic development is concerned. If U.S. is in recession, if the ripple effects impact many countries in the world, and if, for example, free trade is still being battered, then the economic toll on mankind added up together will be hundreds of trillions of dollars.